Buenos días todo el mundo de España. I will try. I speak some Spanish. I'm from New York. I speak mostly Puerto Riqueño. But I'm going to talk to you in English because we have such good translators. Let me find my clicker. If you like what I say and you want to get the slides, you can send me an email. So the best way is to write down my email and you will find it. I want to begin by saying thank you. Thank you for setting up this wonderful meeting. Thank you to those who are here. Thank you to any of you who are watching from outside this hall. Thank you to Nieves. I agree with everything that she just said, so given that, I can go. And thank you to Senor Segovia for really creating what you did in this wonderful classroom and for setting up, bringing us to this place where we can have these kinds of discussions. We've just come back after the holidays. I hope you all had a good holiday. The question is, did your kids? And the machines have changed. They've gotten a little smaller since this picture was taken, but the idea is the same. The idea is that what appeals to us as adults is not always the same thing that appeals to our children and to young people, and we need to take that into account. I believe in having guiding questions, and we heard a bunch of questions, very interesting questions from Nieves, like how do we get more freedom in our education, which I think is huge. I'm going to talk about how we can get our students more engaged in their learning. What's the role of the teacher in the 21st century classroom? What's the role of technology in the 21st century learning? But before we can begin to transform education, if that's our goal, we need to ask why. What's the goal? Where do we want to get? What are we doing? And are we getting to our goals? That's really the fundamental question that we want to ask. Unfortunately, as Nieves alluded to, education typically starts with adults' goals. We say we do what we think is good or best for our kids, but what we really mean is what's good or best for us. And that comes in lots of ways. We want to build society, and certainly in my country you hear Barack Obama saying, okay kids, work harder so we don't fall behind and disappear, and we can fill our jobs and be productive. We want to stay competitive, and every country, Spain, any country, wants to stay competitive and keep the population employed, sometimes show off in their scores. And then what we don't talk about, typically, is one of the big reasons for school is to keep our kids safe while the rest of us go to work. That's the dark side of school, but sometimes that comes to dominate, and that's really bad for the kids because that's when school starts to resemble this terrible thing called prison. The reason this happens is the way we have typically thought of education, the way we've thought of a lot of things in our society, is top-down. We have leaders who figure out what to do, what's best for the people under them, and then they tell us what to do, and the underlying people do it. Now, top-down is okay for some things, but it has a real problem built in that we have often ignored. And I'll let you look at that problem on the graphic. Top-down is really good for the people at the top. It's not so good for the people who are at the bottom. And in education, those people at the bottom are our students. And in the past, they took that. They said, okay, because someday we'll grow up and we'll be adults too, and that'll be fine, and then we can do it to them. But that's not happening anymore. That's not as useful. So I take the opposite approach, which is to start with the kids. What do they need? What do the students need from education? Are we getting there? I call that bottoms up. And we're seeing bottoms up happen in a lot of our society now. We're seeing it in politics with bloggers. We're seeing it even in the military. If you truly want to educate students today, I believe you can't do education to them. You have to do it with them. And our job, of course, is to balance the top down with the bottoms up. And if anybody is in any kind of an administrative position, all the way down to the teacher being the administrator of a classroom, that's what they need to do. Let me talk a second here about education and jobs. When I grew up and went to school, which was, oh my God, about 50 years ago. Yeah, I'm old. Things were pretty imbalanced. We had school, and we had that little percentage at the top, the elite, and we had a group in the middle, and we had a group at the bottom, and we had jobs for those people. And the elite people went and became our doctors and lawyers and ministers and did the top jobs, and the middle people went and did jobs in factories and in other kinds of places, and they knew what they were going to get, and the bottom people had jobs, and we were pretty much set up in sync. There were jobs for all the people who went through school, and we made school do that. Now, turns out, I'm not particularly concerned, and I'm going to just state this in general, with that group at the top, the elite. They do fine. Our top 10%, 15%, we can do better, we will do better, but those people generally don't have a problem. And often we over-focus on them because they're our kids. They're our kids. We're already in that group, many of us, most of us probably, so that's who we see. But I'm concerned about the other group of people under that. Why? Because it turns out school has changed all over the place. Certainly in the US, we have twice as many kids going to college. We have the group in the middle has shrunk.